It's always going to be informal. It's the books and the podcasts are all shingles on a house. The foundation, walls, floors, and joists are always going to be rooted in street experience. I don't care where you work. I don't care how good you think you are. You have to have it rooted in riding a fire truck in the field every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Tailboard Misfits podcast. Today, we're talking with Tip of the Spear leadership host Mike Nasti. He's a 17-year guy out of Washington metro area. He has a total of 23 years of service and now serves as an engine company lieutenant. Mike, how's it going, man?
Good, man. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. I'm pretty honored to have you. I've been a follower of your podcast for quite some time, and I want to say it was probably 3 years ago now. My battalion chief, he was like, "Hey, we have a podcast to listen to," and I was like, "Okay, let's listen to it." And this is the first time I've ever heard of Tip of the Spear, and you had Tim Klett on, and I was like, "Man, that's pretty cool." This past weekend, we hosted a conference, and Tim Klett was there, so I was able to share that story with him because I didn't know who Tim Klett was before then, and it was just like,
yeah,
I've been listening to your podcast ever since.
Sure. Yeah, I had Tim on twice. The first one, I wouldn't say it was rushed, but I feel like the time we were there, we chatted for about an hour, and he kind of reached out and was like, "Yeah," I talked to him about it, and he was kind of like, "Hey, I'd like to have some more time because I feel like we really didn't get to everything." So he came back on. Tim's a great guy. Somebody I've read his books, and if he watches this, one of the best books there is. If you're on the engine or just being a firefighter in general, especially on an engine, he's one of the big engine guys, if not the best engine guy. So Tim's great. I think I kind of forced my friendship on him, which he could possibly tell you is like a little too much. But I'm kidding. But no, he's fantastic, and the fact you got to meet him is great. And I actually took the first time I ever went to one of his lectures was a couple weeks ago. First one I've ever been to, and he did one as a fundraiser for a Somerville Fire Department, I believe it was called, in New Jersey. Him and Bobby Eckert, and I'm drawing a blank on the other speaker's name. And anyway, they were both there, and Tim's lecture was good, and it's rooted in experience, which is nice.
So. Yeah, he taught his company officer lecture, which I don't know if he does multiple ones, but it was just great. And then getting to spend time with him was awesome. So, and I really enjoyed his episodes on your show.
Yeah, he was great. He's great. He's I got to meet him in person a few months before the class that we went to, where I got to have a chance to chat with him a little bit too. And he's a great guy, nice to talk to, easy to talk to, very very relatable, very down to earth. He's a good dude, and his he's one of those guys that you start talking to him, and then like once you get into talking, you're like, holy shit, like you really get into how intelligent, experienced, and how knowledgeable he really is.
That's 100% the truth. So, Tip of the Spear leadership. I kind of wanted to highlight that just because, like I said, I listen to your podcast often. I like your episodes. The guests you have on, from big names all the way down to people that I've never heard of before. You always have a really good way of just like getting their story out there, and we just kind of talked about it a little bit. Something that I enjoy the most about them is that it's just a conversation. Sure. It's not the Q&A style. It's not anything more than that, and then getting to hear their stories. So I just kind of wanted to hear the roots of Tip of the Spear and how it came about, and where you're at with it now.
Yeah. So the one thing I like the most about it, and what I've learned is, how, I don't want to say attractive, but how relatable it can be. I think when you just get guys together that they just want to be firefighters, go to fires, talk about fires, all that stuff. When you start having that collective group of individuals that's what they want, I feel like you get really great results. And, birds of a feather flock together kind of thing. Like, that's kind of a cheesy line, but what I didn't really understand or foresee was how relatable all of this really is. And, I have sold stickers in the past, but, my thing is I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm not here to get you to reinvent the fire service. I'm not here to, teach you how to do forcible entry the 500th way, since, everybody's reinventing the wheel, it feels like at times. And I'm literally here to give you my experience, what I see, my random thoughts. Almost like, because people don't do blogs anymore. I think this is kind of the modern blog. At least for me, it is. And, I just start putting my thoughts out there. What I didn't realize was how relatable it is. And then people start reaching out that are newer officers, people that just like to listen to the show. I really didn't realize how big it would get and how fast it would take traction. And why do I bring that up? I bring that up because I feel like, especially in the fire department, you're going to flock towards other guys that are the same mindset and ideology of you, right? You want to show up, do your best, be good at your job, be aggressive on the fire ground, and be aggressive in general. So by that, I mean, when something needs to get done, you do it. There is a right way to do things, there's a wrong way to do things. But most of all, you're not just sitting around waiting to get told. If you see something needs to be handled, you handle it, whatever it is. It doesn't matter if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, the engine's broken. You take it down to the shop, you switch out at 2 in the morning, it sucks, whatever. You just do it. And then what you see with that overall is people that, this may not be the right way to say it, but they get it. Because there's guys that you either get it or you don't. And it's very obvious when people really just don't get it.
Mm.
So I feel like that's why it's fairly relatable. Where it started was, I've been doing this since January of 2023. In December of 2022, I got hurt at work. Nothing too major. Just had an injury, and I was off for, I don't know, a handful of shifts. And in that time frame, I had a life event that I really don't want to get into, but I had a life event, and it kind of put me in a bit of a funk. So I just, trying to figure out a way to kind of get out of it. And I just started writing stuff down, thoughts or whatever. And, I remember talking to my mom a couple years ago, and she's like, "Oh, you should start a podcast, blah, blah." I'm like, "I'm not fucking doing that." So I did all this writing, and somebody read it, and they're like, "Why don't you do like a blog or a podcast or something?" I'm like, "That's kind of weird." And then there's this guy, he does the Silent Professional Instagram page, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
I went on a different podcast, and he hit me up randomly through my Instagram and was like, "Hey man, you crushed that. You should try a podcast." I was like, "I'm not doing a podcast. Like, this is the third time I've heard that." And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "You know what? Fuck it. I'm going to try it." And I did it. And, just kind of, it really gained traction, and people seem to really like it. I'm about whatever, I don't know, a year and 4 months in now, year and 4 months in now, and 53 episodes, creeping in on 100,000 plays, and like almost 30,000 followers between TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. So it really blew up. It grew a lot faster than it would. I don't think I really appreciated what it would do, or not appreciated, but I don't think I wasn't prepared for what it would turn into. And like, we're on 53 episodes now, so it's good. I've enjoyed it, and I'll tell you, I've learned a lot from it. And the nice part about it, why I enjoy it so much and why I keep doing it, regardless of, just like anything else, there's good days, bad days. There's, good incident or good interactions and not so good interactions. And what I've learned about it and what I really like is, and you may have experienced some of this as well, is I learn these lessons and I talk to these people and I feel like I learn a lot. But the nice part is now I get to go to work and apply some of the things I've learned and try them. And what's the best part about trying new things? Failing at them. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of trial and error. I learn lessons from these different people from all walks of life. And now I get to go take everything I learned from them and, as I see fit, some of the lessons kind of knock them, put them in there, knock it out. And, if it works out, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And it's not bad. And I enjoy it. So I was a little wordy on that, but I mean, that's kind of where I'm started, where I'm at. I followed your podcast. I think yours is great. I followed you for a while and I really enjoyed it. So I really appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that. And I could tell you, later on about how this all came about, but something that you said, a few things that you said really, but just about like learning, like that's what I'm still, I started about 10 years ago, volunteer wise in fire academy and everything, but really just been plugged in for the last few years now. And so using this platform, almost as a selfish thing to learn stuff
Yeah.
and to be able to talk to guys like yourself. And even if, I try to stay like in my lane a little bit. You'll never hear me talk about company officer leadership because I'm not a company officer. I might relate to it, right? Like with you here in a few
Sure.
minutes, but that's about it. And so really just trying to dive into it and just learn as much as I can. But you said a couple things that kind of had me going because you said you kind of realize the guys that get it. And it's funny because I use that phrase a lot. It's just like you meet someone new or whatever, and then like go back and tell like, no, that guy gets it. Like that's all you got to say. It's
Yeah.
like that guy gets it, and people know. And then with social media blowing up and all these different, and myself included, like podcasts that show up and everything like that. Like no doubt, some of these dudes are great, and people might have the same opinion of mine or maybe even yours, but it's just like there is a right way and a wrong way to go about things, and you said that perfectly. Like there's
Yeah.
people that want change, but there's a right way and a wrong way to get change, and trash talking your department or the guys you working with, like that's not the way to do it.
No.
And it's all a form of leadership, which but it's just
Yeah.
like, man, when I see people that I think have their heart in the right place, but their post or what they say is just like, man, you're never going to win anybody over with. And I just like wanted to like uh, reference a book to those people. Sometimes I have to build a relationship with them first, and how to win friends and influence people. Like, man, read the book and use it to your advantage.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I'm not crazy familiar with that book. That's one that I've heard about for a long time, and I haven't really gotten to it in my queue. I'll be honest with you, but I know winning friends and influencing people is referenced a lot in in my ventures. Um, but again, like you said, I mean, I don't think you're just talking about yourself, but leadership isn't always about if you're an officer or a chief or whatever. Leadership starts with yourself, right?
Mm.
So how you carry yourself, how you do things in the firehouse, how you do things at home, because things you do at home and your interactions and what you do outside of work will have consequences and follow through into work. Um, I think, and I'm a firm believer, how you do anything is how you do everything. And I mean, I'm not perfect. I mean, there's things that I don't do that's so great, or I don't do well. Is that how you say that? I don't do them well. I don't do them good. I don't do them well. But things I know I need to get better at. Things I have my strengths and weaknesses just like anyone. But again, the point that I'm making is it all starts with you. So leadership, in my opinion, isn't necessarily always about who's in charge, as far as not in charge, who is accountable at the level, at the company officer level, let's say, right? It's not always about them, because yeah, I mean, ultimately they are in charge. However, you need to be in charge of yourself. And Frank Viscuso in one of his books says, a leader of one can become a leader of many. If you can't lead one, you can't lead any. And I don't want to, hopefully I didn't butcher that quote, but basically that chapter in his book, which actually I have the book here. Uh, Step Up Your Teamwork is the name of the book.
Okay. Yeah.
And basically what he's getting at is it starts with you. If you yourself cannot become the example of what you want, both in life and in work and everything, I mean, you're not going to get that out of it. It's just, like I said, how you do anything is how you do everything. And
Yeah.
with
I
you,
tell I tell people all the time, like, I'm a student of leadership just as much as I am the fire service, and for the longest time, it took me a long time to realize that exact point. Was like, I'm having all these problems, or I think that I'm having all of these problems, and trying to be pissed off at this person or this person for what they're doing, and then it was just like, you're not being the person that you want to be either. So it's just like it took a lot of self-talk, look in the mirror to really make that change.
yeah, I mean, and the other thing too is you can't control how other people act and what they're going to do. It's just like at work. You can't control how many fires you go to. You can't control the calls you have. You can't control any of that. What you can control will always be how you react to it. So, you know, you got to do something, right? You got to do your best and react appropriately. You can't overreact or you can't just underreact. a lot of those things that you mentioned, sometimes you can't control all of them. Um, Most of the time, you can't control all of them. But what you can do is always work on how you react to it, whether that's getting better at something, having a different interaction. And you talked about, you know, interacting with other people. And I talked about this on my on my page that not that long ago. Was a lot of the times, a lot of the issues you think you're going to have, and the conflicts, you're just stewing in your mind, and you're ready to go to. I mean, and I'm sure you've had this where something rubbed you the wrong way at work, and you're like, yeah, that dude, f him,
Mm,
and I'm gonna give him a piece of my mind. He was a jackass last shift, blah 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 blah. Or it just happened 10 minutes ago, and you walk in and you're ready to go, like ready to square off with this dude, and he comes in, hey, blah blah blah, like nothing ever happened, and then you're like, well, wait a minute, all of that shit was in my head. So that's the biggest thing is you're don't be your own worst enemy and get out of your own way when it comes to exactly what you were talking about, I think.
yeah, and I've read a book, and I'm trying to remember. It might have been Chief Corley Moore's 9 L's. He talks about that exact thing. Is like whenever we're delaying, if we think we need a hard conversation with someone and we start delaying it, we start like making up all of these different things in our head, right? Like this guy hates me, or he's talking shit about me behind my back, or whatever. And then just like you said, that guy didn't even think twice about it. And he's just like, you're making up all these things when a simple conversation could have fixed the issue.
Yeah, I
And so,
mean, no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, I was just saying, so like being able to uh, just face the issues that you're having at that moment is such a huge, huge thing. And because I talk to people, or people will reach out to me, and it's just like, and a lot of it has to do with like, man, my company officer doesn't push training. Like that's what it is. Like, how have you handled that? And I'm like, well, for one, I can't really relate that much, right? But I've gone through seasons where that has been the case. People have problems outside of work and everything like that. And it's just like, what are you doing by yourself? Right? Like there's so many things that you could do by yourself until maybe you need that company level training, and then you're going to have to go have that conversation with your officer, or those guys are going to come out there and train with you most of the time if they see you out there doing something by yourself.
Yeah. And I mean, everybody's got stuff going on. I mean, I feel like I'm trying to think of how to say this. I think people look at others more so than looking at themselves. Now, should the officer do stuff? Yeah, he should. But if all you do is wait around for the officer, what are you doing as far as initiative? Right? It's really easy to say, oh, well, he didn't tell us to do it, so we're not doing it. Fuck it. Like, yeah, I mean, really, that's that easy. And then what is training? Like, how many times are you going to go out and pull that dry hand line? I mean, yeah, go ahead. I mean, that's fine. But you've also ran a call in this weird building that you've never seen before, and you walk right out of it because you're trying to get back to pull dry hand lines, where you could just stop for 15, 20 minutes, talk about this, look at it, you know, pull a line if you want, whatever. I've had some of the best drills where I learn the most by those random impromptu things.
Hmm.
So, when it comes to training, I think relevant training is always the most important thing. I mean, obviously, relevant is subjective to the individual. So whatever they decide is relevant, because what may be relevant to me may not be relevant to them. But it's really easy to sit back and just say, "Well, he didn't tell us to do it. We aren't doing it. Now I'm annoyed." Well, yeah, okay, but why aren't you doing it? Right?
Hmm.
So training doesn't always have to be practical. You could just be engaged, being engaged throughout the day, listening to calls, talking about other fires, like when I go to work and there's a fire while we're off, we talk about it. Hey, did you hear about this last shift, or what happened, or whatever, or they put out a box somewhere else. We're all listening to it while we're at work, and pull it up on Google Earth. Well, what would you do for this? What would you do for that? All that. That's training, because there comes a point, and I'm probably going to get crucified for this. There comes a point where pulling dry hand lines after working with the same crew for 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, it's good. Don't get me wrong. But I feel like you can get the same benefit if you're laying out pulling lines on boxes. You're going to get those reps, you know. When there's an opportunity to pull a line and you haven't done it in a while and it's on a call, that's a good time to get a rep in, because you're in an unfamiliar spot. You're not sitting in the firehouse. You're not just driving to your favorite drill spot. It's real world. Treat it as if it's on fire. Who cares? It's an AFA, whatever. We're on. I mean, I'm on an engine, but you know, lay out, pull lines, ladders up, aerial up, everything.
Yeah.
Every single time, gear on, pack on, radio on, everything, every time. And you're going to get those reps in, and then of course, when the weather gets nice, do some water, flow some water, flow water up steps, flow water coming down steps, all those things that you may or may not get in. But I feel like people get so hyper focused on identifying that the officer's not training with them when you go on a call and it's not the officer doing it. Well, it shouldn't be the officer doing everything. It's collective, right? One person's never going to be as strong as a team, especially a team that's tight and has chemistry. And
Yeah.
I feel like, when everyone kind of starts taking their own initiative, you can build that chemistry as well. So, I think people get too caught up in, oh, we have to drill, we have to drill, we have to pull lines, we have to do this, we have to do that. Yes, those are important if they're relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Practical, good, relevant training will always beat pulling lines just to pull lines, putting up ladders just to put up ladders. Because, I mean, it's good to put up your 28 or your 45 that you haven't done in a while to keep that muscle memory up, and that's fine. But if you go to a parking garage, you put it up against a wall, you take it down. All right, we did a drill. All right, cool. Like, it's not doing anything. Why don't you park the ladder truck a block away and say, hey, we're blocked out by the engine. Here it is. Let's go. Let's get our ladders up. That's different, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not fun. That sucks.
Yeah.
I don't know. You get, any engine company headache. You get there, pull short. All right, well, how are we going to extend this line? That's how we're going to extend the line. Let's go rock it out and, knock it out. Those kind of things.
Yeah. I talked to Chief Scott Thompson a couple of years ago down at Teeks here in Texas, and before that conversation, like I was on the of the mindset, like if we're not doing this elaborate drill, then we're not training, right? Like that's just the way my mindset was. And I used us being busy, which who's not these days, as an excuse. Like I just kind of was like, he's like, well, why aren't you training daily? He was like, well, it's hard to do this and do that because we're so busy. And he was like, so you can't talk about it? I was like, wow, okay, that makes sense, right? Like, and it
Yeah.
just, I didn't know what I didn't know up to that point. And so, like, now one of our goals on the engine at the station I work with, it doesn't always get met, hear me out, but is we do it what we call a daily stretch. And it's not pulling the line in the bay. It's, hey, we're on a med call. Hey, let's stretch this house because we've never stretched it before. Or the other day we had a med call at this back to back quadplexes. So 4 units. And there was a little alleyway and another 4 units. And it was like, I don't know if our thing will, or if our pre-connect will reach that. Let's go find out. That way, if we ever have a fire here, we know what we're doing. And so it's just stuff like that. And, the ladder companies, same thing. If they make a run, throw the ladders at the residence or wherever they're at. So I thought that was a big point to be made.
Yeah. I mean, if it's appropriate, right? You don't want to go pull lines and throw ladders when someone's loved, someone's
Sure.
citizen just died, triple shooting and you're running past them with a pre-connect probably
Yeah.
wouldn't be that great of a look. But yeah, no, I mean I understand where you're going with that, and I think relevance is all set by what works for you. So whatever you find is relevant, I think. But again, like I said, there's a lot of people out there that have the greatest intention, and you just have to make sure it's relevant to what you need.
Mm.
So like if all you do is train on worst case scenarios for driving an engine, but you never train on the bare bones basic of how to put it in gear, how to do the manual override if your pump shift breaks, and you don't do any of that other stuff. And all those doomsday scenarios are great and they look good. They're sexy to do. They're fun, but you now run your first fire as a pump operator or engine driver, whatever you call it. And you can't get water because you're so up in the pipes because you never just trained on the muscle memory of the basics. What good are you doing for anything? Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we talked about in the recording. So, you go to a gym and they've got these dudes that have all these elaborate, case in point, these elaborate workouts, these atmosphere masks and all this crap. And then you have this old dude who's freaking ripped and he looks like a brick shit house. And you're like, golly, that dude's like 90 years old and he's fucking, well, not 90, but that dude's old, older and gray and he is ripped. And he's wearing Chuck Taylors that are probably as old as I am, ripped off sweat shorts, a old shitty t-shirt, and he pounds water and he freaking cranks them out, does like 315 for 5, squats, whatever, and he just walks away. And then you got these dudes doing all this elaborate shit, and I mean, they may or may not be in that great shape. But the whole point is, I think efficient. I don't want to say minimalist, but I'm a minimalist fan, like a bare bones. I'm a basic fan, only because I think the basic brilliance in the basics will always work. And then as you evolve, those things can evolve as well to fit whatever you have going on.
Mm-hmm.
Because when things, in my opinion, and why do I say all this? When shit hits the fan on a call, and I feel like running boxes as an engine officer, in my experience, it's more likely that something's going to pop up and you're going to have to adjust and go with plan B instead of plan A or plan C or even plan D regularly because
Mm-hmm.
things happen on calls is ridiculous. It happens so much where why can't this be a simple I drive in a straight line, I make a left and we're there? No. Something happens, something changes, the address is inaccessible in the rear. Like it's always something. And you have to just make a minor adjustment. What I've learned is if you know those basics very, very well, and then you have to jump into your Rolodex of experience, I feel like it sets you up for success much more than failure. And when you do too much with something that can be done very simple, like we talked about before, that straight line between 2 points, simple. I mean, keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
I think and that goes with being an officer as well. I think think of things of what you would want as a firefighter. When you're an officer, think about how you would want things to be when you're a firefighter, when you're looking for an officer. Keep it basic. It's the same thing, skills and training and all that. What would I need to get this done as a firefighter? Oh, I need X, Y, and Z. All right, well, let's train on that. And I think people just, and this isn't to trash anyone, but like just go on social media. There's people on there that are finding 15, 20 different ways to do a bare bones basic skill. Are they being creative? It's cool. Yes, it's great. You want to use webbing to throw a ladder? Fine. That's great. Okay. You want to use rope and tie the rope around the hose and tie the rope around your waist and you're a backup guy? Cool. I mean, it works. Whatever. I mean, whatever works for you. If that's, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But is it too elaborate? Are you adding too many steps? And there's a saying out there, and I'm not going to say it because I'm going to screw it up so bad. But basically, just keep it simple. And that ties to what I know I'm long-winded and I apologize, but back to the beginning, the whole point was, the relevant training in the basics, I think, is a great place to start. And then once you have that foundation and as you move and you evolve and your mistakes happen, I don't want to say just train on your mistakes, but train on those things that you learn that are new, and I think people are, again, like I said before, they just train in the wrong things or they're doomsday preppers. Like, what if this plane hits the building and then the building hits your engine and now you can't use this valve? What do? What? And that's an elaborate, I say that in jest, but you understand what I'm getting at.
Yeah, no, I do. And I'm trying to think of the podcast, and I think it was the leadership podcast. They're talking about a general that was he oversaw special operations operators, and he was like making a point. It's like these operators, they're not training on all these elaborate like tactical maneuvers or whatever. They're training on the basics. They know the elaborate maneuvers that they need to do, but they're training on the basics, and that's only because that whenever shit hits the fan, the last thing that they're going to have to think about are the basics because they're going to know it like the back of their hand. They're going to know how to clear the jam in their gun. They're going to know how to reload, all that different stuff that they do. And it's the same thing when you're talking about at least engine company work, right? Like I know how to stretch my pre-connect like the back of my hand, right? So whenever I stretch short or whatever, or I'm going to have to go around obstacles or whatever the case may be, stretching that pre-connect's the last thing that I'm thinking about because I already know how to do it and mitigate those errors, right? So it's just so relatable to the fire service.
Yeah, and you can focus on the task at hand. I don't want to screw this up, and he's going to probably ridicule me for it if he watches this, but Bobby Eckert makes a really good point where he talks about the front door is not the goal. I'm going to screw that up. But anyway, I mean, exactly like you said, the seat of the fire is the goal. Wherever that seat is, you have to get there. Obstacles, it's never a dry parking lot. It's never a straight stretch. It could be, but you have to plan for all those things. You have to get around cars. You have to run around citizens that are just like, oh, what are you guys doing here? And you're like, get it fucking out of the way, please. Random crap. And I don't know what this is like for you, but where I work, it feels like you could turn a block for a house fire or a call, and there's no one around for miles. The minute you hit that parking brake, it's like moths to the flame. Then all of a sudden, the dead end street, there's 100 people that have to get out. They see you come in and they're like, oh, I gotta go. It's like 2 a.m. and there's like 10 cars that try to drive around you and you're pulling a hand line. But there's always going to be obstacles and everything in the way, obviously. But, you can never predict where the fire is going to be, and there could be anywhere and everywhere. And the whole point of that is any obstacle that gets thrown at you, your goal isn't how to beat that obstacle. Your goal is how to use the basics to achieve pulling a line of sufficient length, size, and GPM to contain, confine, and extinguish the seat of the fire. That's the whole point. And what I've learned is every obstacle is, and I'm not saying like, it's always, a crapshoot, but the basics, right? So pulling a right line of a right length, you're not going to want to pull a 300-foot line for a house that's 50 feet away from the street, and your tailboard of your engine is, for conversation's sake, 50 feet. That doesn't work. It's too much, right? You have to do everything to help yourself. So you should know those things. What I've seen is people stop out front, and obviously sometimes the terrain and the way the houses and the street are obviously can dictate a lot of things, which is obstacle number one. But you have 200-foot attack lines for places that sit 5 feet off the road. And now you have to go that way and then back that way and then come over here. And how many times have you seen guys where they do all this elaborate crap with their hose line, and all they had to do was take a breath, look in the front yard, and they had a ton of room to just throw it out here and have a straight run with the line right into the front door or wherever they're going to access it. The basics of taking a breath and looking around, the basics of knowing your area, knowing that, yeah, you should probably, get this line flaked out, obviously, but take a second and look. Well, yeah, I could do it here, but I could go do it over there and just flip it over the fence. You know what I mean? And I think that all comes again, and I'm kind of getting off topic a little bit, but I think that all comes down to basics, the basics.
No, it does. It does. For context purposes, in your area, do you guys ride four-man engine companies?
Yeah.
Four-man? Okay. Do you guys have like a lot of like single family homes, or is it like row homes or?
So where I work, we're in an urban area. We're just outside of the District of Columbia of the city. We're in the Maryland. Well, I'm on the Maryland side, but it's an extension of Southeast DC as far as construction. So like World War II era, there's a lot of garden apartments in the area that we respond to. Our first due, there's a lot of small houses, and ordinary construction. There's little shit shacks. They're like, we can call them bungalows, 1.5 story, 2 stories, a lot of balloon frame where you'll have they're thin, tall, but they're very deep. So you'll have like a 25-foot wide, but they're 45, 50 feet deep, balloon frame, flat roof. We have a couple, I call them row houses because they're ordinary construction, flat roof, and they share one common wall, which is the front facing wall.
Yeah.
To me, that's a row house. I think if it was 2 of them, it'd be a duplex.
Right.
We have a couple of those. We have 2 metro centers, so underground transit. And then there's a lot of, 60s, 70s, and 80s split floor, split level. Those are in there, but there's a lot of 40s and 50s style houses.
I was just saying, with the exception of the rows, we practice. It sounds pretty similar to what we run, which our city's fairly old as well. So,
yeah. The area that I'm at, it's been around forever. But the town that the station is in was incorporated, and the neighborhood was built I think in the 40s or
Okay.
50s. I have to go back and look. I have the article of it. I just
Yeah.
we'll say 40 stuff. World War II construction.
Do you guys pull off the rear or cross slays?
So yeah, everything for the unit that I ride on, everything's off the rear, and there's a trash line on the front. But we don't mess with that because it's rubber piping
Sure.
around the front axle, so everything comes off the rear. So
Gotcha.
dumpsters and trash piles, the bumper line, but anything else is going to be a pre-connect off the rear. They're all Minuteman loads too.
Sweet. That's almost we leave. So I rode the same engine for the last 3 years. I just transferred stations, but practically the same thing, except we have an abundance of hose. We have rear pre-connects in the Minuteman as well as crosslays. So we have, yeah, just a shit ton of hose. I couldn't do the math in my head right now.
I mean, people say what they want about crosslays. I think where I work, a 150 crosslay would be fantastic. I wouldn't even mind a 150 off the rear. We have we run a 200, 250, 400, 300 off the rear.
Okay.
And then
Cool.
3-inch and 4-inch supply lines. But I think a 150 would be spectacular.
Yeah.
But I don't make fire trucks, so.
Sure. And so just curious. So you're a lieutenant. You've been a lieutenant for how long now?
It'll be about 10 years in August, so like 9 and whatever.
Okay. So what does a typical day for, as far as we're talking about training here, so what does a typical day for you and your engine company look like as far as training goes?
So it's very hard to explain because it's fluid, and I don't want to get into too much detail about kind of the work stuff because we talked about it. I try to keep work as separate as possible from this stuff, but basically collectively we're going to come together about something, right? Collectively as a crew, we typically are together 99% of the day. No, we don't do that whole everyone goes and hides in their corner bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking fireman stuff. We look at fireman stuff, and you're engaged, which is the biggest thing. And wherever the day takes you is where the day takes you. If there's a building like might have been 2 shifts ago, we ran an address that I haven't been to in a long time. Actually, I might not have ever been in that building. I've been to that strip center, but never in that building. And I knew it had a second floor. What I didn't realize was the nuances of this is just the easiest way to say it, the nuances of the address. So a guy that was riding with me that day had a lot of intimate experience with that building because he worked in that area for a while before transferring to where we are. And he's like, hey, man. And we walked through all of it. We talked about it. So that led into another discussion, which led into another discussion. And then before you know it, we're 4 hours deep in stuff. And we've been talking about all this stuff in between calls, on calls, during calls, but you're engaged the whole time. And I like that too. But then also there needs to be a balance of, not just sitting around talking about it in the station, you go to it, I think it also comes down to being cognizant of who you are or who's on there. So like, I'm not going to go to a 13-year guy that's proven time and time again on fires that I've actually been on him with. I'm not going to, let's go pull this hand line in a dry hand line in a parking lot. No. What are your weaknesses? I don't know about X, Y, and Z. All right, well, let's work on that. Or, hey, I read this article and we all talk about that. I mean, to me, I don't know if that's making sense, but I think it all needs to be catered to who you are. And I think when I work, a lot of them are doing self-initiation on a lot of it. And we all just kind of collectively come in and then, it's never me being like, let's go talk about this. And there's times where I'm like, hey, what do y'all think about this? Let me pick your brain on that. A lot of it are on after boxes, every box, unless, policy dictates otherwise, lay out pole line. Well, there's your drill for the day. Well, not your drill, but that's your your muscle memory for the day. Hey, what do you think about this? Hey, what do you think about that? Did you see what that company did? Well, why did they do that? This is what I would do. And not to critique them. Like when I say, why did they do that? Be like, oh, I saw engine 1 parked here, pulled their line there. Why do you think they did that? Or, whatever. Well, this is what I would do. This is why. And then we'd walk around, take a look, and there's been plenty of times we run a call, they cancel the whole assignment. And it's like, hey, just keep going. I want to take a look. All right. You know what? I would have laid out here. We're third due. I would have laid out here and we could have pulled our line there. And then you could have, somebody in the back be like, hey, bad idea, LT. This is why you should probably try this. Or, hey, that's a good idea, or whatever. Right. And then those little, you get more wrinkles in your brain, so to speak. random articles like these kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And initiate conversations, reading those. One guy has a bunch of those, and hey, I read this article the other day, blah, 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 blah. You know, um, Departmental social media can dictate certain things. Like if they post fires that the department ran, we'll talk about them, kind of go over what we would do. Somehow the building construction will probably pop up at some point. Do we have anything like that in our area? It's just engaged all day, every day. There's no time frame. It's not like 7 to 3. We're pulling. No,
Yeah.
it's a all time thing. Even after midnight, when everyone's tired, if something's kind of wonky, it'll pop off on the call, and then everybody goes back and goes to bed.
Yeah.
Talk about it on the call. I think is the right way to say that. So, and then at the battalion level, I think they're trying to kick off more drills. So we'll be a part. We'll do those things as well. But yeah, man. I mean, even the medicals, like we run. I wouldn't say we run a lot, but we run our fair share. So even on medicals, open the map page. This is where I would lay out. And I may not necessarily say something, but that's what I'll kind of do in my head. Or, you run a service call or whatever, a non-emergency call. Hey, here's the hydrant. There's connections. Park there. Don't go park over there. I want you here. Treat everything as if it's on fire. Expect fire on everything, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say pretend, but that's what I do in my mind. And then what I've noticed over time was I'll just start talking about it. And then what I noticed over more time was they start talking about it. And they would say, what do you think you would do if there was if there was a fire here? Or what do you think they would do if this apartment's on fire? Or, oh, hey, did you see this? That'd be great if we had a fire here. That would screw us up. We need to remember that. Check your
Mm-hmm.
keys on buildings. That kind. I mean,
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. There's a few things that you said that like I wanted to highlight because it just makes so much sense. And not knocking anybody because me and at my station we do the same thing, but it's more of a backup plan, and I'll explain. So you've heard like the whole mnemonics of like, oh hey, it's Monday, so Mayday Monday, Tactics Tuesdays. Some people do like Water Wednesdays, that stuff. And so the way that I always looked at that is we have that as a backup because we want to eliminate the whole like asking your wife what she wants to eat for dinner scenario. Hey guys, what do y'all want to train on? Oh, I don't know. It just eliminates that. Okay, if no one has anything, then we're doing Mayday Monday or whatever the case is. So, but doing what you might not be efficient on, especially if you're on the same crew for an extended amount of time and you got some squared away dudes, because a lot of times it was like, hey, we need to work on this or this or this, and it didn't necessarily line up with what that day had slated. Um, the other part of that is you were talking about like the I'm going mind blank, but yeah, the training. I might remember it in a minute. The just focusing on exactly what like you need to work on. That was a big thing for me because like you said, you can only and there's multiple ways to look at it. Like Aaron Fields says, the difference between amateurs and professionals is professionals know how to practice through boredom, and it was like that's some people's way of thinking of like stretching that dry line every single day, right?
yeah.
And so there's argument to it, but you can only stretch a dry line so many times before you have to move on and do it at a building or at different places or whatever the case may be.
It loses relevance at some point. But I think you kind of said it was how to work through boredom. So I wouldn't really say it's boredom, but you know, how many places throughout the country don't lay out and pull lines on a reported structure fire, unless there's fire or smoke when they get there. That's I didn't realize it, but that's kind of a normal thing out in the country. I mean, my focus is inside the DC metropolitan area, which is extremely fast paced, extremely congested fire department wise. Like there's fire departments everywhere, high call volumes, and I think that's another one of you know treating these call and the department that I work for does some of it's kind of but a lot of it I kind of like it because they do they have a I'm trying to think of how to say this. They have a staging criteria where you don't commit to the building, but you still do what you're supposed to. So if you're third due, you're going to lay out, pull a line in the rear, give a rear size up, and then stand by. To me, the officers getting their brain exercise, the crew's coming together to get their line in place, and the engine driver is driving to the call in a safe, efficient manner. Because if you can't get there, you can't put the fire out. So everybody's getting their stuff exercised. It's just not game time. You're expecting it to be on fire, and you get there and it's not. All right, we'll work our way backwards. backwards, or we'll scale down, rather than showing up and now you got to scale up.
Mm.
You know, and there's always all kinds of stuff. Like I said, even the boxes you have to stage on. Hey, look, hey guys, so we're staging here, but if we have to, we're going to lay out. We're going to park in the rear, and we should be able to run the 400. We're only 3 buildings back. It should be good. That's my plan. Everybody's brain's going. They're engaged. They're looking at it. They're thinking about it. Maybe they're refreshing, going, "Oh, these are 3 garden apartments all linked together. It's the end one, and we're going to have to go park on the opposite side with a hydrant. Oh, 300. Oh, that'll work because now I remember. I just refreshed that each one of those buildings is just quick street math about 100 feet wide. So if there's 3 buildings, 300 feet ish, and however far away the engine is to hit that hydrant, that 400 foot's probably going to be a home run."
Yeah, I remembered what I was going to say now. I knew it would come back to me. What you were talking about, like even after midnight, right? It's not unusual to at least talk about something.
Yeah.
And I've heard a lot of rebuttal to this, like it doesn't make any sense. But one of my battalion chiefs, we were dispatched to a structure fire, ended up just being like a burn up AC unit in some apartments. And excuse me, right across the street from there was we just noticed that it was a weird shaped building, and what it ended up being, it was a duplex, but it was like one up, one down, and there was a building or a door on the Alpha side and a door on the Bravo side. The door on the Alpha side led straight into a bottom floor apartment or residence, and the door on the outside actually led up straight up to stairs into the second floor, and it was another unit upstairs. And so I didn't hear any groans or grumbles, but I'm just saying if people were like not paying attention, like not two shifts later, we responded to that residence for a structure fire, and it was just like there was no one that was lost because we all knew what was going on. We knew that there wasn't an interior staircase, right? Because we had been over there, and so it was just like that was proof in the pudding for me that regardless of the time, like if you find something, to take time and go over it.
Yeah, and the nice part about that was what I've realized is too, like when you start doing those things throughout the day, and then then your guys are kind of like asking that stuff after midnight. It's kind of cool. And what I was getting at with that is it's not always me initiating these chats. A lot of the times, and this is something that I've kind of, as much as I don't want to admit it, um, I have found myself needing to shut up more, be quiet more, and I started trying to do that. And what I learned was how much you can learn from other people when you stop talking because you're listening. You're listening to hear. You're not listening to understand. You're listening to understand. You're not listening to respond.
Mm-hmm.
And that took me a long time to really to listen to do. And what I found was how much I've learned from other people over the last 5 years, we'll say. And it's good. And what I think is, like I said, a lot of the times it's them saying stuff, starting the conversation. I'll kind of sprinkle my stuff in. And what I've learned with that is, there is a healthy amount of me saying, "Hey, what do you think about that?" Or, whatever. But the most of all, especially the after midnight stuff, is where I really started to appreciate it. And then it's starting applying it to the rest of the day is just simple, short questions. You don't have to be elaborate. You don't have to show you're super smart. You don't have to, I'm going to come in and drill today. 7 to 1500. That's your drill time. No, no. Just, hey man, I saw this. What do you think about it? And what I've learned is it creates a lot of buy-in. And then before you know it, it's 11 o'clock and you're hungry. You're talking about all this stuff. You're like, man, I'm hungry. You look over, it's 11 o'clock. You start at 8:30 or whatever. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I always want to make sure I clarify this. It's not like people no one's like shitting on any of the other companies. It's just literally, how easily, because of how close all the departments are, how we are in our area, first through fourth due are less than a minute apart. And it's all AVL. So it's like boom, boom, boom.
Mm-hmm.
You're arriving, boom, boom, boom. So a wrong turn, a car accident, and where I work, there are trains zipping around in different places. You can get stuck behind a train. I mean, everything and anything can change a lot. So it's really nice that, these guys take that initiative to do that because, yeah, we're first due right now, or we're fourth due right now. They clear the box. Those 3 companies are staying. We're leaving, and we get tapped out 5 blocks over for a house fire, which is almost the same tactics you're probably going to use on that one because there's similar construction. You're in the same neighborhood. You're in the same first due.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that. And, I just think the simplistic approach um, generates a lot of feed buy-in and a lot of participation, especially at that company level, when
It,
you don't do too much as the officer. And not too much, but I'm just saying, like, you're not like a drill sergeant. You're more like
sure.
one of the guys as far as I'm part of this team collectively. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, and
Be the officer. Don't get me wrong, but not
it
fair.
it says a lot about you as a company officer, though, for to be able to. I resonate with the definition that leadership is influence, and to create the type of influence and buy-in that you have to get those guys to start talking about that stuff,
Yeah,
at midnight or whatever, that does say a lot about you. And I could 100% relate. Like the same thing, trains and different routes and neighborhoods. We have a lot of streets that have cutoffs. So if you take the wrong turn, you're gonna have to
yeah,
backtrack. And so a house that you would typically be second due to, you might end up being first due to. Like we not as close as you. That's really close, 1 minute out, but fairly close to other units. So that's cool. That's cool.
yeah. And and I appreciate what you're saying, but I think I do need to say that a lot of it was just learning from the guys that I work with. A lot of it is, I don't want to say humility, but I don't want to say I came out of my shell as an officer, but like I really undervalued how important it is to listen to the guys that you work with the balance of not being a pushover and making decisions. So what I mean by that is, a lot of it, I followed their lead on a lot of it. And I think what I just needed to do was, listen to them as far as what they're talking about. And then when you, like I said, stop talking, you start listening, you can learn how to read people. You can kind of learn what makes them tick. And then, you know, you can foster those relationships, I think. And then the most important thing was letting them have their time to shine, letting them have the floor, so to speak, to talk, you know, giving them feedback. Hey man, I saw you did X, Y, and Z in this call. That was really freaking good, dude. I'm proud of you. Nice work. Nothing crazy, nothing, no big deal, whatever. Even once in a while, you kind of know what you're doing, but you're not really sure. Like, I think we should do A, B, and C. Hey, Bill, I'm thinking A, B, and C. What do you think? Yeah, man, I would do that, or nah, I wouldn't do that. You know, when time allows. In the moment, it's a dictatorship. It's not a democracy. Hey, we're doing boom, 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 boom. I'm open to feedback, but I'm making it. This is our plan. All right, cool. Hey, LT, I don't think that's going to work. Why? Did you see the roll up gate on the, or I don't know, that's a bad example, but did you see there's bars on all the windows? We can't go through that window. All right, well, that's a problem. Like, you know what I mean? Maybe that,
No,
yeah,
yeah.
that might be a bad example, but take feedback from here, take information from people, but you have to make that decision. And, where I found a lot of that in the firehouse was if you tell them, I need X, Y, and Z done, just do it. Let them figure it out as long as it's not like anything crazy. And one situation I had, they were talking about, they're trying to find a more efficient way to do something, and I don't remember exactly what it was, and I don't know why it's screwing me up. But they're like, well, why don't we just connect these two lines instead of pulling the 400? It's easy. It's not that hard. Why don't we just do that? And then everybody's kind of talking, and they were like, what do you think? And I'm like, no, 400 foot. It's pre-connected. There's no extra steps. It's simple, done. And I just kept walking. I was actually walking to go do some paperwork, performance appraisals. And I heard them talking, and I didn't say anything. I just walked out, and they're like, "What do you think?" I'm like, "No, we're gonna pull the 400. It's the simplest. That's it. Like, we can try it if you want, but if we get a call in 5 seconds with that scenario, we're pulling the 400. The other stuff, to me, it's too much, but we can train. We can try it out on a drill if you want." And they want that too, I think. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can't, oh, I don't know. Well, I don't know. Or, anytime you get a little bit of feedback, then you change again, you change that, you change that, you change that, because you're trying to people please. It's too much. They don't want that. So that's where I think I really evolved. And then getting freaking called out. Like, hey, dude, this sucked. We looked like shit on this call. And they're not like, Lieutenant, you suck. Well, no, it's, we didn't look good because we got lost because I screwed that up. So you get the feedback without getting the feedback, if you know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean. So, it's again, like I said, a lot of the evolution was getting a group of guys that have a lot of experience, want to be there, they get it, they have the buy-in of wanting to be a shift and be a cohesive crew, and they really are second to none. They make my life easy. I don't think I've ever had my balls broke as much as I do now and been held accountable. Like I don't get away with shit. Like I'm gonna get hit with a hammer just like anyone else. There is a separation. Don't get me wrong. It's not too close, but I feel like, and this was said by somebody, they feel comfortable enough to be honest with me rather than have to just be like, whatever, he's the officer. I mean, they're going to do it the right way. There's been a couple times where, I've needed to get checked, and the way they do it is correct. It's not disrespectful, and I think, I think that is the only reason why a lot of things have gone the way they have is because of those guys, not me individually, without that collectively.
Yeah, but I still want to say that does say a lot about you, though. I mean,
Well,
because and I know you're trying to be super humble, and it sounds like you have a badass crew and really really good squared
oh,
away dudes.
they're the
But
best guys around. They really are.
it says a lot about you to be able, because if day one or whatever, you have that relationship with them, and they would have called you out, even if it was the right way. Like if you wouldn't have been who you are, that would have shut everything down completely.
Yeah. No, I mean, I could see that if you can't accept it or appreciate it. I had one guy. This is just in general. This isn't anyone on my crew. I've had one person say, like, I'm not going to go out of my way to help somebody, but if you come to me and say, hey, I need help, or hey, I suck with this, I don't know what to do. They're going to do absolutely everything to help you. And that person that said that is incredibly smart and very experienced. So, I mean, it's a two-way street. You got to meet them in the middle at minimum. Don't go out of your way I'm trying to think how to say that. Don't like go running to them like a groveling child because you're worried about their opinions. Go to them when you genuinely need help and you think they're the right person to help you. And I think that will go a long way. But if you are clearly running around because you're worried about making them mad or upset, or when you do piss them off because you fuck it up, I think that is the wrong way to do it. But when you say, hey, yeah, man, I screwed this up. If y'all got any suggestions, I'm open. And they give you them, great. If they don't give them to you, meh. Is it awkward for a while? Meh. It is, but you have to accept the consequences for your actions. And I think that is something over time as well. When they see that, like you screw something up and you piss them off, you just, yep, I fucked it up. I apologize. And then it's over and you move on. Just drop it. Don't do it again. And I don't know if this is something that you've had before, but you know, one of the most impactful points of my career was a fire that went really, really bad. Um, just for conversation's sake, I'll call it Smith Street. So there was Smith Street. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. And it took me a long time to realize it was because I just didn't prepare people correctly. Fast forward probably a year, a whole new shift. Like it was so bad, like my old shift, just everybody just kind of bit out. Like, and I think it was because of me. I'm not really sure, but I'm pretty sure it was. New shift comes in. We kind of get the growing pains out of the way, whatever. Well, the same Smith Street again happened a quarter mile away, maybe 1 or 200 blocks away. That's not right, but you know what I mean. Like every street has a couple different 100 blocks.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I mean, maybe a quarter mile away, and had a absolute ripping fire on the second fire. The first one was really good. The second one I thought was way better. It was way hotter, and it was jet black smoke blowing out, fire blowing from the rear, and it went fucking fantastic. Every one of the guys did their job awesome. The linemen knew exactly what house, even though it was hard to see with all the smoke and everything was just covered in black smoke. I mean, it was everywhere. Knew the exact correct line to pull. The driver hit the hydrant. The extra guy on a different unit did extra guy outside vent stuff. Line got in place. Door got forced, even though we had a security door, lowest level on a split foyer. Fire went out that fast. First arriving truck was the second unit. All they saw was steam. Smith Street, good. So now the joke is anytime we pass the Smith Street dad, they're like, "Oh, look at that! You remember that one?" And they fuck with me about it. Or the common joke was, Smith Street good, Smith Street bad. So now it turns into a joke, and it's funny. I mean, there's no shortage of ball busting, like I said, but you know, the evolution of that to me was remarkable, and I kind of forgot where I was going with that, and I apologize for that little bit of a rant, but
No, I love it because I typically ask people for a story, so that covers that. But
they,
I mean, it's just like a lot of stuff. Like this is why I love leadership so much, is because there's so many different facets to it, right? Like so many different, and it's just this umbrella uh, concept. But like everything that you just talked about, from your guys to yourself, like just fits under that. And so naturally, as we kind of come to a close, I want to be respectful of your time. I know you got places to be, but uh, you run Tip of the Spear Leadership podcast, and when it comes to leadership, have you learned more formally as far as books or podcasts or classes, or has it been pretty informal through mentors and life experience?
it's always going to be informal. It's the books and the podcasts are all shingles on a house. The foundation, walls, floors, and joists are always going to be rooted in street experience. I don't care where you work. I don't care how good you think you are. You have to have it rooted in riding a fire truck in the field every day. And because your currency, your leadership currency, in my opinion, and this kind of came up not that long ago, of, if you come out and you're a lieutenant and you've been in an office for 5 years, now all of a sudden you want to ride a fire truck, you're going to probably be okay at some point. But what I've always learned was the bones of, the bare bones basics, the structure of a house is always going to be the strongest and supports everything. You don't put the roof on first, right? You build the foundation, the floor joist, you hang the walls, you sling drywall, all that stuff. That's all of your riding a fire truck every day, making mistakes, learning. And I don't know if this is the way it is for you, but I feel like any mistake I've ever made where I just royally screwed up and looked like a moron for some reason seems to cycle itself right back. And at least in my experience, it's like, wait a minute, I've seen this before. Last time I did this, I'm doing that now, and it goes great.
Mm.
And again, that's all rooted in experience as being a firefighter. If I don't know what to do as an officer, I default to being a firefighter. And what do I mean by that? Whatever the scenario is, there's fire in a house. I'm not really sure where to start. Well, if I was a firefighter, I feel like I'd want my line here because it looks like that. I'm going to start there. This is our plan, guys. Boom, 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 boom. And the men go to work. They want to be there, want to put the fire out. And then you learn a little bit. You get a little more wrinkles in the brain. You get those when you learn, apparently, I read. So I personally think, none of it works without a strong foundation. And why I say that is no matter where you go, you could go to the worst firehouse, but been a firefighter in the best firehouse. And you go to that shitty firehouse that you don't want to work at, but you're a brand new lieutenant. Those guys are going to be like, wow, he was at Engine 1. He went to a bunch of fires. You know what? He's a new officer, but he probably knows what he's doing. I'm going to be okay. We're going to figure this out together. Because what you don't want is, I was a firefighter for 2 years. I've never put out a fire. And then at 5 years, I'm now a lieutenant, and you walk in the door and they know you've never put out a fire, or you become a chief at a high level, or an executive level, or a battalion level, or a captain. And everybody knows you've never put a fire out before. It's a bad look. So all that foundation, and kind of actually why I gear my podcast to just being a dude that rides a fire truck every day. I learned everything in the field. I've never been assigned to an office beyond, like, I think I hurt myself and I was in an office for a very brief period. It all matters. The guys that get it, the guys that want to go to fires and be firemen and do fireman stuff, that's what they look at. They don't give a shit about how long you have on and all that other crap. So why I say that is all this, like this magazine, fire notes, all that, they're all icing on the cake and shingles on the house. But the foundation and the structure is all built by your hard work and your time in the field and going on calls and putting out fires and screwing up fires and doing them again and then fixing it and then doing well. And then it all ebbs and flows.
I love that. That was a great analogy. I've never heard that before. And something else I've always heard is, everyone says experience is the best teacher, which I don't disagree with. But something else I heard even makes more sense. Evaluated experience is the best teacher.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny the way you said that. So on my show, I have to go back and look at the exact episode, but I have his name's Ed Glassman, and one of the things that he talked about was street, all that street stuff will can only take you so far. You have to have formal education, and he is right. Your life experience isn't always enough. You do need to get formal education. Formal education isn't always a college,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
Take different classes that are going to make you better. Like with me, I suck at written communication, so I took an English class, took a communications class. You know what I mean? And I mean,
Hmm.
still not that great, but it's better. It's heading in the right direction rather than staying stagnant, and that's the point. You know, I really despise where people are like, "Oh, OJT, on the job training, it'll get you anywhere." No, it won't. I mean, it's gonna validate you and show people you've kind of been there before. But that formal education is so critical and important, especially in a leadership role. Like I don't have a bachelor's degree. I don't. I'm working towards it. That's my next goal. Um, but what I can tell you is the leaders and even the informal leaders, the senior firefighters that are educated, that are very educated and have a lot of experience, the way they carry themselves, the way they talk, and then people gravitate to them because of those things is remarkable. And I don't know if I don't know. That's an observation I've noticed. I don't know if that makes sense how I said it, but um, if you're a leader and you're an officer and you really want people to gravitate towards you, you have to be educated because if you sound, look, talk, and act like an idiot, they're going to be like, yeah, all right, dude, whatever.
No,
So,
I agree 100%. So, Mike, man, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. Thanks for taking time out of your day. Like I said earlier, man, I'm a big fan of your podcast. Some of the best episodes that I listened to. The one not long ago where you had the FDNY guy on that he just told stories the whole time. That was great. I enjoyed that. I forget his name, but man, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this. I want to do it again. I feel like we barely scratched the surface of what you have to offer. So I'd love to have you back on at some point. Is there anything else? Anything else you want to add? Where can people reach out to you? Where can they find the articles that you've written, stuff like that?
sure, yeah. So you can look me up if you just put in Tip of the Spear Leadership on Instagram. It's going to come up. Facebook, TikTok, all that crap. It's all in there. And to sorry, my phone keeps buzzing, but the episode that you're talking about, the guy from New York City, that's Lou Ruff-Rano. I'm going to butcher his name, so he's going to be mad at me. But the episode that was 51, and it was the fires that made me, and
Yes.
it's a good one, and that's a discussion I wanted to have for a long time, and he, in my opinion, kind of fit the mold. And it was just literally just like I talked about before, just shit. I went to fires. This went great. This didn't go great, and that's just what we talked about. And he's another guy that gets it. He's one of the hosts of Getting Salty.
Hmm.
If you've ever heard of them,
Hmm.
so. But yeah, no. Most of all, just take care of yourself. Make sure you're sharp and ready to go to work, and then when you're sharp and ready to go to work, you can take the day as it comes and be a good asset to your crew and everyone around you rather than the opposite. So, but most of all, man, just take care of each other. I kind of wrote about this a little while ago. There's so much crap going on in the world, so much crap going on in the fire department industry, but this is still the best damn job there is. This is so much damn fun. It's freaking awesome. It's cool. Fires are awesome. EMS and medicals kind of suck, but just like anything else in life, you have to do other stuff that you don't want. And what I've learned was if you do the right thing, be where you're supposed to be, and take every call and treat it with the best of your ability and treat it as just taking it one call at a time and doing the right things the right way, those fires that you want will come. I'm not a big karma guy, but what I've learned is if you're where you're supposed to be, do what you're supposed to do, they will come, and you're going to miss some and you're going to want to do stuff. And this fire was really good and it sucks because you're third due. Well, the next one's going to be even better and you're going to be first due. And that's how that's played out so many times in my career. It really has. So Yeah, man, just take it one day, one call at a time, and do your best, and love the job because it's the best one there is.
Wow. Thanks. Guys, this has been Tailboard Misfits Podcast. We'll catch you on the next one.